Okay, hi everyone. Good afternoon. It's lovely to see you all, and you're all very welcome. You're welcome to this evening's session, which is going to be a really wonderful session consisting of mainly around the theme of imagination, but we're going to have speakers, we're going to have performances, we're going to have discussions and topics around creativity and the arts and various different approaches to brain health and mental health. So I'm really looking forward to our lovely collection of speakers and performers. Our first speaker is going to be Virginia Sturm. Professor Sturm is based in UC San Francisco, where she's based at the Weill Institute for Neuroscience, and her main area is clinical affective neurosciences. Her main areas of interest are the role of emotion and social behavior in neurodegenerative conditions and neurodevelopmental disorders. There will be a little bit of time for questions after the first couple of talks, but I'm going to try and keep it on schedule because we have a packed lineup to get through. So I'll introduce our first speaker, and I'll let Professor Sturm take over.
All right, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. And I'm going to be talking today a bit about our work on awe. And just as a historical note, when GBHI first began, I was involved at that time, and we didn't have any fellows. And so those of you in the program know you write grant applications for your pilots. And because we had no fellows, faculty were invited to write pilot proposals. And so this was my pilot for GBHI, and it got reviewed by the leadership team here before I had met anyone at Trinity College. And I remember when I came over the first day and I met Ian and Brian, and Ian said to me, "We were wondering who this crazy Californian was who wanted to study awe." And I think it took me a few years to convince him of the merits of the work, but I'm happy to say that the project was completed and we have some interesting findings. So you'll see some photographs in the presentation, and the ones of California here are from our participants that they submitted as a part of the study. But you don't need to go to California to experience awe. So here's a picture of the library here at Trinity College Dublin. I remember when I first stepped into the library, maybe many of you have been there, and if you just kind of pause and take that in for a second, and remember what it's like to walk into that library, it's really the sense of wonder. You feel very small in relation to this majestic kind of architecture and building, as well as all the books and all the knowledge and accomplishments that's kind of housed in that library. So the feeling that you might have had when you stepped into that library, although you may not have named it, might have been the emotion of awe. And so awe is just one kind of emotion, but we have many different emotions in our lives. And I just want to clarify what I mean when I use that term, because there's lots of ways to think about what emotions are. And so this is just one kind of working definition that we use. So emotions are brief. When we have an emotion, it's just really a few seconds. It kind of happens in this unbidden fashion a lot of the time. And certain thoughts and memories come to mind when we have different emotions, as well as certain physiological changes in the autonomic nervous system and in our motor system and our facial expression. So when you feel different feelings, at rest, your bodies might be doing all sorts of different things, but an emotion kind of harnesses all those systems together to help you to cope with something really important in the environment. And sometimes that can be a threat, something physical, a physical danger, or it could be something social and help you to connect with other people and to form lasting relationships. So each emotion serves a different function, and that's why we have it in our lives. So just to give you a couple of examples, negative emotions often have this kind of survival relevance, physical survival relevance, and so two common emotions that we think a lot about when we hear about negative emotions are fear and anger. And you can see that these have very specific facial expressions associated with them, and that's so they can communicate really rapidly to someone far away that there's something important in the environment without using any words. You could see my face looking afraid, and you might look around and make sure there's nothing threatening for you as well. And often these kinds of emotions are associated with the activation of the sympathetic nervous system or the fight or flight response. And so when we feel these negative emotions, really our attention kind of hones in on something like really important. We have a narrow sense of attention. Often we're focused on ourselves. We're worried, we're nervous, we're thinking about what we need to do to deal with the threat in the environment. And these are important. The emotion of disgust, for example, if you don't feel disgust, you might ingest things that are rotten and contaminated and get yourself sick. So that emotion really has a very important survival relevant function. So when we have these negative emotions, they're important for our safety, but we want them to abate. We want them to be brief. And this is a lot of work done by Brian Lawler here, who has documented the importance of increasing positive emotions, especially as we age, and not having sustained negative emotions, such as loneliness is one we think a lot about. When you have sustained chronic negative emotions, there's a number of physical and mental health effects that are associated with them, unwanted effects, and detrimental aging trajectories are associated with these kind of sustained negative states. And so one idea that we had in terms of improving brain health in people as we age was to increase positive emotions and to kind of undo the effects of negative emotions, because physiologically, positive emotions kind of do the opposite. Whereas the negative emotions do this fight or flight, the positive emotions kind of bring us back down to baseline. They create this kind of calm internal state. And they also help us to engage with other people. When we feel positive, we want to reach out, we want to make new friendships, we want to share, stories. And when we feel negative emotions, we kind of want to sit at home and watch Netflix and maybe eat ice cream. And so you're building these relationships when we're feeling positive. And we're also having new ideas. When you're in a positive state, people have more ideas. They have more creativity. And they're really focused outwards. So you're focused on the needs of other people and fostering states like compassion and empathy. So the positive emotions are a whole family of emotions too that we could talk a lot about, but today I'm just going to focus on awe, which is one of them. So awe is a really interesting positive emotion because it arises in response to vastness, perceptual vastness. And this can be something physically very large, like the Grand Canyon, but it can also be something physically very small, but perceptually very vast, such that you can't really understand it without kind of rearranging how you understand the world. And we call this accommodation. So you have to accommodate this new information. You shift your kind of mental schemes to take in this new kind of stimulus. And awe can unfold in a variety of situations. So it can be in a physical, like a nature environment, or also in response to the achievements or the actions of others, some very moral actions or intellectual achievements, things like that. Here's just a brief list of different places where you can find awe. So you don't need to travel far. I think awe is really a state of mind. You can shift your attention outward and just look on your street as you walk to the bus or you walk to work, and just focus on the details of the world around you. Look at the leaves of the trees, look at the flowers. It's easier to go somewhere new to be in awe, but you don't have to go somewhere new. So there's interesting studies of looking at cultural similarities and differences in emotions, and generally there's an idea and evidence that emotions are very similar across cultures. However, there are also differences in how we learn about what emotions we should express, which situations, it's appropriate to show things, and when. And so this was one study that compared how people feel awe in different countries. Here was the United States and China. I don't know if you can see the words up there, but it was a diary study, and the point of the study was to see where people report feeling awe in their day-to-day lives. And some of these examples were like technology and nature in response to other people. But you can see there's some differences. And so in this study, for example, they found that in the United States, we're 20 times more likely to feel awe about ourselves than people are in China. So you may not find that surprising. Okay, so different kinds of studies manipulate awe in a variety of ways. So this was one study done by Dr. Keltner and his group at Berkeley, and they bring people outside, and one group of people looks up into this beautiful grove of trees, and another group looks up onto this concrete building. And the group of people who look up into the trees, then they do some kind of task, like someone drops a bunch of pencils or something. After you've looked up into the group of trees, you do things that are more kind, you're more helpful, you're more generous, you describe yourself in more humble ways. And again, awe is fostering this kind of pro-social focus. I'm thinking about you. I'm not worried about myself as much. I'm thinking about how we're all connected and part of this much larger kind of universe, and therefore I'm more focused on the needs of you and being a good person than I am worried about my own achievements or needs. So it's this focus on the collective and that social focus that really kind of makes awe a special positive emotion. Okay, so to talk about the study that we did, we did an intervention study. It was called an awe walk study. And so what we did was we brought participants, they were older adults over the age of 65 to about age 85 or 90. And half of the people were randomized into a control walk group where they were asked to take a weekly 15-minute walk for 8 weeks. And we didn't really tell them much else about the study, but we asked them not to look at their phones and try to go alone if they could. The other half of the group, who was randomly put into the AWalks group, they were given these additional instructions. So they also took a weekly 15-minute walk for 8 weeks, but they were told to really kind of try to experience awe. So we told them that. We told them how to do it. We said, tap into your childlike sense of wonder. Again, try to see the world with fresh eyes, look at the details of the world around you, really kind of stop and, smell the roses kind of thing. And then they left the lab and we didn't see them again, and I hoped for the best. But we emailed them every day and we asked them lots of questions about how they felt on a day-to-day basis. And we also asked them questions about how they felt when they took their awe walks or the regular walks. And so what we were looking to see was whether our awe walk instructions increased awe, but like I said, we told them to do that. So the fact that they did increase awe in the awe walk condition, but that was just step one to prove that our manipulation had worked. What we really wanted to know was whether there are these spillover effects into other emotions, those pro-social emotions like gratitude and admiration and compassion. And we also wanted to know if the effects of the awe walks weren't just on the days that they took the walks, but whether there was this more generalized effect on all of the days that we were asking them about their experience. And so what we did see was that even on the days outside of the days that they took the awe walks, the awe walk group you're going to see is that green line, and you're just looking for these lines to kind of diverge over time. And the gray line is the control walk group. So you can see that over time, the people who took awe walks were reporting more of those pro-social positive emotions on a day-to-day basis. They were also reporting kind of decreases in their day-to-day levels of distress, like anxiety and anger. People who took awe walks also felt that they were part of something larger than themselves. They reported feeling in the presence of vast things. They reported feeling connected to the world around them. So again, it was that not that just that they felt good and they felt like all positive emotions. They felt these very specific, other-oriented positive emotions, and they felt connected to this larger world around them. So one other really interesting thing about awe is that it encourages what we call a small self. And a small self can sometimes people think that sounds like a bad thing. But really what it means is a small yet connected self. So small in relation to all of the, goings on in the world, all the problems in the world. You feel small in relation to all that, but still important and connected. So there's been studies where they've kind of tried to manipulate the size of yourself. And here's another kind of clever study where they brought people to Fisherman's Wharf, which is a touristy kind of area in San Francisco. And they asked people, it's a little hard to see, but they asked people to draw a picture of themselves when they were in that environment. And you can see in the circle, that's the picture that the person drew when they were at Fisherman's Wharf. It's a regular picture. It's on graph paper so they could quantify how many of those little squares they filled with their body image. But when they brought people to Yosemite and they looked out and saw this kind of amazing nature around them, people felt small, and they drew themselves in this very much smaller way, kind of shrinking down into the background, feeling less the center of the world, so to speak. So what we wanted to do in our study was to test whether we could also find evidence of a small self or a shrinking self in the people who took the awe walks. So what we did was we asked people to send us selfies on all of their walks. So we got thousands of photographs from the participants over the 8 weeks as they took their awe walks or their regular walks. And then what we did was we traced their silhouette in each of the photographs, and we computed the percentage of the photograph that they filled with their own image and the percentage that they filled with that background space. And so a large self, fills the selfie, no judgments on anyone's selfies, but you fill the space with your own image. But we wanted to see if people over time in the AWA group kind of shifted to make more room for that background, more room for the world around them. And that is indeed what we found. Over time, they kind of shifted down to the side. I'll show you an example here. And they filled more of their photographs with the background than with themselves. So here's an example of someone who took a control walk, and week 1 she's in the center, same at week 8, and here's the woman who took an awe walk. Each week she started right in the center on week 1, and by week 8 again she's kind of shifting down to the corner to make more room for this world around her. We didn't tell her the small self theory. We weren't trying to encourage her to do anything, but it was just this kind of unconscious way of bringing in more of the environment. And so I mentioned that when we feel awe, we have to kind of accommodate and readjust how we take in the world and understand it in order to take in this new information. And in the process of kind of accommodating and shifting, it can promote new ideas and new connections in the brain. Here's a nice quote by Einstein, who's talking about the sense of awe that he really drove him in his scientific efforts. And I think there's some evidence that certain kinds of professions, such as science and art, often have increased levels of this awe proneness, and we're kind of all motivated by those mysteries of the world around us to pursue scientific lines of work. And so what awe is doing when we're feeling it is that it's really acting on our nervous system. And so awe not only affects how our brains are activating, but it's also creating changes in our internal physiology. So to give you a sense of what that means, when your heart is beating, if it had no other inputs, it would beat like a metronome. It actually beats quite quickly, and it beats with no variation. It's very rhythmic. Here's a depiction of the vagus nerve, that's the blue line there, but from the brain, there's systems in the brain that control the vagus nerve, and as we're breathing, the vagus nerve is braking and slowing and accelerating the heart and decelerating the heart. And so when you breathe in, that brake comes off, your heart rate goes up, and when you breathe out and expire, the brake comes on, the heart rate slows. And so across your breath, there's this variation in the heartbeat that we refer to as heart rate variability, or there's a more specific component called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, or RSA. And so we all have that in different levels, even at rest, even sitting here in this room, for example. And so why are some of us, more prone to awe and maybe more prone to certain professions that are creative and endeavors that are creative than others? Well, I would suggest that, perhaps that our physiological state that we're born with and that our life experiences continue to shape kind of increase which of us are more easily experiencing awe than others. This quote I found, and I thought it was really lovely because we can all shift our attention, and there's ways that we can move this system around, but also there's probably some set points that we all are kind of born with from early in life. And just to close on some thoughts that we have about why some people might be more prone to awe than others, as I mentioned, it might actually relate to your brains. And there's 2 hemispheres in the brain, and this is an oversimplification, but I do think it's helpful, where the left hemisphere of the brain is very important for verbal processing and language. And the right hemisphere, I'm sure many people in this room know, is very important for nonverbal things and creativity and emotion. And so in our collaborations with the UCSF Dyslexia Center, we started to wonder whether in people who have a problem or a weakness in one side of the brain, such as kids with dyslexia who have struggles with reading, that actually there might be enhancement of the other hemisphere, because there's this idea that these hemispheres are kind of in competition. So if one is kind of weak, one might actually be released or stronger. And so briefly, we have done some studies now looking at this, and we've found that kids with dyslexia are more emotional when we test them in a laboratory setting. They have more expressions on their face. They have more reactivity in their autonomic nervous system when we show them different emotional movies. And even at rest, when we measure that heart rate variability, that RSA measure, kids with dyslexia have higher heart rate variability just sitting in the lab doing nothing than the kids who have no learning differences. And so what would that mean? Well, if you're at baseline sitting here with higher RSA, I would suggest that it would predispose you to having more of that outward focus, having more of those shifts in your flexibility in your mental schemas, and having more creativity. And perhaps this is mediated by awe. Awe is setting you up for having this parasympathetic reactions. And we've actually found some links now in our data suggesting that the kids who are high in RSA are the more creative kids and the kids who are more prone to experience awe via how their parents are reporting them. So this system, this emotional kind of system, seems to be enhanced in kids with dyslexia and probably in adults with dyslexia, and again, predispose them toward these nonverbal kinds of creative professions. Here's just some examples of some artists I found from Ireland who have dyslexia. So, maybe dyslexia is kind of enhanced in these creative nonverbal professions. Okay, so to conclude, I think we can all take very simple actions and kind of switch our mindset to increase our experiences of awe. And this, by improving our positive emotions or increasing them, there's this idea of this like upward spiral of well-being where it becomes easier and easier to find and feel positive emotions once you're in this positive state. And we found this with different kinds of evidence from our data, from people's self-reported experience and also from their photographs that they've sent us. And I think this is really important for us to consider here because positive emotions can have important effects on all of our brains as we're aging, and also can really help us to be more imaginative and creative humans and do amazing things, bridging art and science as we do here in GBHI. So with that, I'll close, and I'd like to thank the support from GBHI, as well as all the people at Berkeley, San Francisco State University, and UCSF who made this work all happen. So thank you so much.
Wonderful work. Thanks so much. I'll be very strict and take one question to keep us on track. And you're the first hand I've seen, so we'll go ahead with yourself. No, yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the wonderful presentation. Two things, please. One, could we use virtual reality to induce awe in laboratory, in clinical practice? Second, the sense of smallness, does that mean less self-esteem or high self-esteem? Because in psychology of positive relationship, higher self-esteem should be a little bit higher sense of self than lesser sense of self. I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the virtual reality question, I think definitely. I think you could definitely, even from a video, I mean, we try to elicit awe just with a movie, but virtual reality and awe for sure. Like, you can pet the dolphins and swim with the, whatever. Like, I would definitely believe that would increase awe a lot. And so, yes, I'm all for that. And self-esteem, yeah, it's not, I guess I wouldn't think of it as a shift in anything like that stable, like self-esteem or self-confidence or things like that. But it's really kind of putting your world and your problems and your life in perspective and not minimizing that any of that is really important and meaningful to each of us. However, it's just kind of putting it in this larger frame for a moment to allow you to focus outward rather than inward. It doesn't mean I don't feel confident or able to tackle the challenge. It's just kind of my mindset is focused more outward or inward and in the small self kind of modes. That's how I think about it. Thank you.
It's lovely.
Great.
It's a great question. Thanks again. Thanks so much. Virginia. So our next speaker is our performance and visual artist from West Cork. So I'll introduce her to the stage. It's Justine Foster. She's going to join us next. She works with the West Cork Arts Centre and is the program manager of the ILLIN project. And looking forward to hearing all about her work in community and public settings.
Thank you very much. Very much feeling the small self at the moment. I feel that regularly, though. I'm not a performance artist. I've got to say, I'm very much the visual artist. So that performer isn't in me. So I will be reading today from my slides. Is it? Are we good? But as I am program manager at ILLIN West Cork Arts Centre, and ILLIN West Cork Arts Centre is in West Cork. It's in a rural coastal location. All right, there we go. And but what I just wanted to say first really was why I think I might be here is because I'm really passionate about supporting access to the arts and creativity, no matter where we are at in our lives. I think imagination is so important to our way of being and helping us navigate life. This picture is personal to me, because this is my daughter now, who's now 19 and a dance artist. And all these three are artists, creators as adults now. And so I just look back with fondness on that. I work at West Cork Arts Centre. It's in many of you know maybe Skibbereen in West Cork. It's by the coast. It's a really small population, but within that population we have this amazing art centre called Uillinn that creates access to and engagement with local and global arts practice of excellence. We support a multidisciplinary arts programme with a focus on contemporary dance and visual art. And through the programme, we seek to create many ways in which art, artists, and the public intersect. The building itself is about presenting an art space that's worthy to our community, a thriving space that embraces imagination, freedom of expression, and creative thinking. It's an incredible 5-story building in a town of only 2,000. It took us 20 years to realise this building, and it was opened in 2015. And it was very much led by the community need and desire to have a space to celebrate the arts. And it's designed to be fully accessible with double-height galleries. It has 3 visual art studios, a dance studio, cafe, offices, and lots. What excites me is about the design is the lots of curious spaces in between. So here, like the stairwell, the exhibitions and the corridors and the spaces where aren't necessarily designed, they're the curious places that we come across people. The spaces are designed, though, to interlink. And so the rooms come together and have double height and overlap and have mezzanines. And they encourage conversation between people who visit and the artists who work in the space. So at any one time, we can have maybe 4 artists working there, dancers, visual artists, multidisciplinary writers. So while much of the work we do is purposefully programmed, a lot more happens without planning. So collaboration is born out of these conversations and corridor meetings. And the first week that the centre opened, I walked into the gallery, and there was this incredible exhibition with 4 artists, really, really high quality artwork. And this aerial dancer was just, she was dance artist in residence. She was wearing bright green in kind of contrast to the orange of the building, and she was doing this aerial piece responding to the artwork. And the photographer in residence was taking a picture, and a poet was in the corner who was also in residence just writing a response. And had I not walked through the door at that moment, that I'd have never have known that existed. So I think while buildings aren't everything, spaces do create, can encourage and create more creativity. So not all of our programme, though, takes place at Uillinn. Much of it goes beyond and out into the community across the entire region. So we seek diverse ways to increase those points of intersect where artists and public meet. Artists who work with us, they take their work out to schools, community halls, on walks in the town, out in the country, explorations at beaches, and art education on the islands. And also the harder to reach places, daycare centres and hospitals, which I'll talk more about in a moment. But I didn't realise when I chose this slide just how I suppose the symbolism of bridges has been used throughout the last couple of days. And this is a 12-arch bridge in Ballydeharb where an aerial piece, the same aerial dance artist, performed off there with 40 dancers with and without disabilities. It's quite awe-inspiring. So either in the centre or in other environments, for me, it's about setting the scene. It's about lifting barriers and creating space for imagination to flourish. At all ages and at any point in our life, we seek different ways in which we want to be creative. So sometimes the most important element is about honing an artistic skill and the satisfaction that's derived from maybe making a finished work. But at other times, it's about exploring the ideas, the creative process. But at any time as well, it can be engaging with a finished piece of work, watching, listening, and enjoying being challenged by new perspectives. whatever the mode of arts experience we choose, through the programming at Uillinn, we try to make it as easy as possible to access. So, like I say, removing these barriers, whatever they are, their cost, mobility, so many ways can impede our access to the arts. And we want to remove these and reach out to the seldom heard voices, in particular that of older people, as this presents a significant growing proportion in our community in West Cork. Back in 2002, we initiated Arts for Health. It's a strategic and sustainable response to an ageing population, which enables choice, social inclusion, equitable access to the arts for older people. But it's very much centered around the individual, their creative needs, and as spoken about before, a responsive approach to art making. So for us, Arts for Health in West Cork takes place in 11 healthcare settings across the West Cork, and it's supported by an interagency partnership between local authority, education and health, our Cork County Council, Cork Education Training Board and Cork Kerry Community Healthcare. The makeup of the partnership demonstrates the commitment of those three authority agencies working together for a shared goal of providing arts access. So, but as Roche Walsh, who's currently our chairperson, but she's also director of nursing in Schull, and she's seen the programme grow from when she was a staff nurse to her position now. And she said something beautiful only a couple of weeks ago. She said, "Arts for Health tells the untold stories. It provides staff and residents with a means of displaying our pride in what we are, ordinary but extraordinary." Alongside the partnership, we have engaged a multidisciplinary team of artists with specific expertise in working with older people and in delivering in healthcare settings. So at the moment, we have maybe 14 artists on the team, delivering between 8 and 9 sessions a week across the 11 settings. Over our 20 years of programme delivery, which is like, God, how did that happen? We've learned that one of the challenges in working in a sustained, continuous way is ensuring that we have this fabulous team and kind of nurturing their expertise, their inspiration and methodology that makes the work meaningful. And by meaningful, I mean to both the people they work with and to their own practice. And we do this by supporting them in terms of offering them residencies, time to peer share, ideas, training, time for them to collaborate, work together, to enable us to give that balance between being responsive and consistent for the healthcare environment and for the people who want to take their time to explore their own ideas, but also to keep that element of surprise and intrigue and creative ambition, that balance is always there, so we can enable spaces where well-being is minded and creativity flourishes. The infrastructure of the partnership and the artist team helps us with resilience, my word of the moment. And over time, we've created relationships of trust, a network between managers, healthcare staff, artists and participants. We work strategically together, so we come together, we think in the long term, but we respond in the moment. And 20 years is a long time to keep a programme of that scale funded and nurtured. So, and that's an ongoing piece of work. But it's this network that has enabled us to be agile, my new word, creatively responsive to our changing circumstances, such as that we've been through recently, when we continue to deliver the programme without breaking contact for even 1 week. Time has given us that ability to change and shift within the circumstances. So we have this framework of trust, of communication, so we can be free to move within it. Access to and engagement with the arts in healthcare settings, I don't need to tell any of you this really, improves the quality of life for individuals in residential care. It encourages conversation and links with the wider community. By being integrated into the culture of care, the programme allows both creative, collaborative ideas and individual creative interests to be nurtured and developed and implemented over time. So by being integrated into the culture of care, the artists, they contribute to care plans, they attend the nurse's station after the sessions, the conversations, that what they have to say about their sessions matters to the person's care plan. The programme seeks to work with people as they gain in age, so following interests and responding to environments. So where possible, we make links in the community, seeking a flow and connection between the services we offer at the centre and in the community. A nice example of this is Haiku Shelter, which was part of Compassionate Culture Network and initiated and managed by Irish Hospice Foundation, supporting people experiencing loss. Participants might be referred through a partner programme such as Cork Adult Education Services or signposted through the healthcare setting. So they might link in with one of our, with the palliative care in our Arts for Health. We're hoping to keep those links and circles of, because we're a small community, you might meet the artist out in one of these sessions, or you might meet them in a hospital. Artist Test Leak has delivered several series over the last 2 years using the creation of haiku-inspired poetry, drawing and printmaking. And as Tess describes, I think, there we go. On long winter walks in between sessions, we collected haiku objects as starting points for drawings and conversation. What's great about using creativity to talk about grief and loss is that we don't have to share directly. We can share through something we've written or made or drawn. And post-pandemic, with the support of HSE, we've begun working with family carers, both at Uillinn and in their homes, in recognition of the challenge carers have in leaving their home. We call this our Creative Carer programme, which looks towards the creative well-being of family carers in a range of multidisciplinary ways, delivered by Sarah Ruttle and composer Justine Grounds from the Arts for Health programme, both of whom have really high level of expertise and care. To gain access to the programme, family carers can be referred through daycare or through sessions at Uillinn. Once an artist and carer are paired, they work over 6 sessions to explore and unlock creativity in their everyday life. I have a beautiful quote from one of the family carers, Breed, who explains the process much better than I can. She says, "My husband Ian played in a symphony orchestra for over 20 years. However, he hasn't played for the past 5 years because his Parkinson's, until artist Justine Grounds arrived through Creative Carers. And now he's loving it. Justin has changed his life at 81. He brings so much joy into both our lives. As carer 24/7, 365, it has made coping with Parkinson's easier. The joy of music is back in our home." Behind this programme is the support and combined knowledge of the interagency working, giving us the confidence and support to create unique, safe spaces for imaginative experiences. And for the last 10 years or more, I've been a member of Arts and Health Coordinators Ireland, who Gráinne mentioned earlier today, which gives me a perspective, a national picture, a place to learn with peers from all around Ireland. Like I said, I'm in West Cork, so it can be quite isolating working there, so the network of peers is really, really important to me over the last while. In 2020, AHCI embarked on a mapping research to measure the changes in the sector. The research demonstrated that those programmes that had input from multiple partners ran for longer periods and were more likely to show resilience against the ever-changing funding landscapes. You can find out, I won't say much more about that research, but you can find it on the artsandhealth.ie, which is a national resource website for arts and health practice. But just as Grania said, I want to give a shout out to my peers. It is our 20th anniversary this week, 6th of March. And if you want to follow the hashtags, I think there's some nice quotes that members have put up. So, yay. Hi to all of you out there. I want to finish by sharing a short film. It's made just over a few weeks, just using tablets. It's really low production, and it was made just as we came out of the pandemic. But it's about the River Illan that flows through the heart of Skibbereen and under the Arts Centre, past the foot of the hospital and the daycare. It connects us all. The film shares a poem and music by the hospital community and imagery compiled by the Arts for Health artists, bringing that important imagery into the hospital environment. It takes the residents out of their care setting and into their imaginations, carrying their thoughts and ideas down the flow of the river.
We honour in song and in story a beautiful town of Skibbereen, its hills and its glades, its rills and its streams, and our own lovely river, the Isle. She's in this idyllic spot on the west coast of Cork. She's calm and serene when she can be seen, which is not quite as much as we'd like to. Her exiles, wherever they wander, they all have a story to tell. And the reason for this is they have but one wish, to be back home in Skib Cushalon, the most southerly river in Ireland. She rises in Old Drumalig. She meanders along as she sings her sweet song, at the start little more than a stream. She wanders about, then heads for the south and broadens her banks as she goes. She reaches Madore, where her land lies so low, a shower of rain puts her banks under strain. She reaches Ballyhilty Bridge, where she eddies and flows through her tree-lined groves amidst her beautiful flora and fauna. Her mossy banks are verdant and green as she heads for the town of Skibbereen. She glides down the middle road and gracefully under the bypass she goes. She flows down North Street. She's narrow and straight. On her far side she's clear to the marsh. On the home side she's hidden away, so few get to see her display. There's a twist to her tail as she does a tight loop and lies back to back with herself, so she has to unfurl from nature's tight curl and head for her home in the west. At Leavis's Quay, locals call it the bridge, she is joined by her mainstream, the Kyle. She comes from the south, gathering small stream and rill on the way down from her home on Coombe Hill. They mix and they merge, they flow past the steam mill. As she nears the new bridge, there's a strong tidal pull, and she undergoes a sea change into something rich and strange. At the start, everything was so simple, and now she's totally unique. Her fresh water and salt water are mingling, and she's spreading to estuary range. Her water is totally saline when she reaches Roaring Water Bay. So this is the end of my story. She is now much too complex for me, but the river is always in motion, and she goes on to meet Carberry's 100 Isles and the ocean. For men may come and men may go, but the river goes on forever.
Thanks, Justine. That's beautiful work. And I know we'll probably have one quick question to keep us on schedule. So, any questions for Justine? Yes, we have one just here.
Thanks, Justine. That was very insightful indeed. What form of art or what form of poetry do you think work best with the residents? The other does a whole haiku group here in Ireland. They're trying to promote haiku poetry to help elderly and disabled people as well throughout the country. And if you have any kind of views about that, please, yeah.
I don't think there is a best art form. I think all art forms, but I think what works is when you get a dynamic between an artist and people, and nearly, the choice of art form is as wide as the choice of people that are here in the room and their interests. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much. And I know if you have more questions for either of our first two speakers, if you catch us afterwards, I'm sure you can nab us outside. So thanks again. So next, I'm delighted to say that we're joined by some members of the African Brain Health Network. Some of them in the room with us here, like Bongiwe and Funmi and Lena, and some on Zoom. So Kirti and Vonde-r are going to join us over Zoom. And during this section, we're going to have individual performances and presentations and talks by each of the members. So we're going to kick off with a performance. So if Bongiwe wants to join us up on the stage, we're going to have a performance to start. So Bongiwe is an Atlantic Fellow for Racial Equity. She also promotes African bow music, as well as dance, creative writing, poetry, and other forms of creativity to establish and promote heritage movement in Africa. So thanks, Bongiwe.
Thank you.
ngeningembula kunamathambe ngeningembula ewiyo liwule mntakamama malingashone kamahule kuDisemba 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 nakuDisemba kuDisemba yini Disemba kuDisemba
Thank you, Bongiwe. And I'm happy to say we'll have another performance at the end of this session from Bongiwe, so we'll have some more to come later. So our next speaker is going to be via Zoom, and it's Vonde-r. So Vonde-r Fihlani is joining us via Zoom this evening. He's a Senior Atlantic Fellow for Health Equity based in South Africa. And he's a visual and performance artist and drama therapist who uses drama in his rural health initiatives in the area around Soweto. So hopefully he can join us. You're there? Hello, Vonde-r. I'm going to hand over to you and let you take over. Great to have you here.
Hi everyone, Medwin, Sanbona. We're gonna tap into a storytelling moment. I would ask everyone to just try to find a way of closing their eyes so that we can go into the imagination of the story. Tlayang ke leqoqeleng motlotlo o qotwang ke maqheku a qwaqwa Afrika ha qabola. A long time ago, there was Umafunindaba Zengod. Umafunindaba was a woman who went around looking for stories, old Asian stories about mental health and brain health. Umafunindaba wanted to tell these stories to her children and their children to tell these stories to their children. Umafunindaba wanted to embark on this journey of telling new stories about mental health and brain health. Because she had always knew one story that was told about her. Neendaba zakhe zezengqondo. And these stories were told to her by the people of a foreign land. So Mafunindaba went on a journey, he embarked, went through rivers, valleys, and mountains, going around looking for izindaba, zezengqondo, mental and brain stories. Mafunindaba went and went and went. On the other far land, Umafunindaba met an initiative. This initiative formed a part of the African Brain Storytellers, African Brain Story Network. Umafunindaba went into this group and asked them about stories about ezengqondo, their mental health. This group formed part of the Pan-African vision into mental health. This group used old indigenous ways to support communities in ways of telling stories about their mental and brain health. Umafunindaba met this group and have a talk with this group. This group shared with him, this group is not just focusing on disease management, but rather the group is intended and aims to work with mental health, not just disease management. Umafunindaba understood that this group of people came from different Atlantic Fellows program to collaborate around the issues of mental and brain health. This group always stick together and try to create connections amongst them so that they can support each other's work. Umafunindaba learned about this story. Then Mafunindaba took the story and took it back to her children so that her children can tell her children and their children can tell their children about this group of people from a land called African Brain Network. Phela ngantsuku. That's the end of the story.
Thank you, Vonde-r, and I hope you're feeling better. Our next speaker we're going to stay on Zoom for, and it'll be Kirti Ranchod. Kirti is joining us again from South Africa. So it's lovely to see Kirti again. She was here as a global brain health fellow, and she's particularly interested in things like art and neuroaesthetics and how a study of the arts and creativity can inform and help brain health with her background as a neurologist. So Kirti, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Sibusiso and Bongiwe, for that wonderful introduction to the African Brain Health Network. It really is the essence of who we are as a network. I'm going to start with the story of a remarkable African leader Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara was actually assassinated in 1987. Local and foreign influences probably colluded to assassinate him. He was only 37, and he'd been the president of Burkina Faso for not quite 5 years, so just over 4 years. But he had a remarkable vision. So what he did in this short space of time was he actually transformed his country. And I just want you to be aware of his age and his determination to do this in that space of time, less than 5 years. Transform his country from being food insecure to having food surplus. Less than 5 years. He vaccinated more than 2 million children for measles and other illnesses in this period. In fact, the record state was done within 1 month. He had a strong emphasis on environmental issues and on supporting women and ensuring that he empowered women in this process. Can you imagine what he would have done going forward? But what is even more remarkable is he actually rejected all foreign aid, particularly foreign aid that came tied with lots of strings that would mean that he couldn't actually carry out this vision. So how did he do it? Without aid, without the apparently necessary financial resources. He really was committed to his vision. He really developed really practical, pragmatic steps, but he understood that the resource that he had was the strength of the communities and the people of Burkina Faso. And he was able to inspire them and motivate them to carry this vision forward. And that is one of the resources that we have, and one of the resources that we as the network are building, these relationships. I am a neurologist, and in my work, I use a brain skills model to actually support better brain health, but also to tie this into what we have within our traditions, within our cultures, within our communities to support better brain health. Because we have the resources that we need. We can do this to support better brain health and better mental health. What you saw here today, and in terms of, like I said, the work I'm doing is shaped by my culture, my family, the many, many beautiful cultures I am surrounded by here in South Africa, and specific experiences I've actually had along the way, including spending my fellowship here in Dublin. And it was absolutely incredible. And there was lots of beauty, lots of imagination, lots that I learned from. But one thing that I found quite distressing, and I was trying to understand why this had actually happened, was the epidemic of loneliness. Like what happened to a society that this is what has actually happened in the society? That intergenerational communities and intergenerational living and intergenerational activities actually had to be created. They weren't a natural part of your societies. And that the elders in many societies, not unique to Ireland, I'm not saying that at all, were actually pushed to the margins of the society, both physically and psychologically. And the language always used was to describe them as burden and aging as a burden. And I think it made me reflect a lot on this resource that we have, our communities, our families, and the traditions that keep these communities and families integrated and whole and supportive. And what do we need to do to nurture this resource, this cultural capital? How can we invest in this? How can we value it? What you've seen here today in terms of Sibusiso and Bongiwe is in part from a formal education system, from mine in terms of our university education, but it really is rooted in our cultural system. Sibusiso's storytelling or Bongiwe's music. Bongiwe played the uhadi, and when I first heard her play, I was just completely enchanted and still am. And the uhadi is so incredible. It's actually made with a calabash, a carefully selected calabash that has been grown and shaped to form a music instrument. In the video shown, actually, I saw mbira, thumb piano, being played. Again, indigenous to this area, but also understanding the resources that are available in our environment to create music. And there's been lots of science that has been described in terms of how all these systems support better health. And we have these systems embedded within our cultural system. In fact, often we don't consider it within an outside arts space. We don't experience these in art galleries or in theaters. We do. I mean, we don't only experience them in terms of art galleries or theaters or concert halls. They really are part of the way we live. And we need to work out how we sustain them and hand them over to generations going forward. So, like I was saying, in terms of Sibusiso, Bongiwe, and my resources, in fact, I draw and paint, and that is one of my paintings when I was like 13. But I learned from my father in an informal setting, a very gentle father, very patient as a 7-year-old. And he would teach me and my siblings to paint on a Friday evening, canvas, grids, proportions, everything. But this informal education system that really does actually hand over knowledge and wealth is not completely appreciated, particularly in academic settings. Nobody thinks about how to stimulate your brain looking at the resources we have, looking at these very, very precious informal education systems. I go back to just this tradition and culture and learning from them. Now, it is a generational wealth that we've actually handed over, but not just handed over. It's actually grown over generations. It's adapted to resources, to challenges, to opportunities. That's what knowledge does. This is the knowledge we have, and that I know is present in Ireland and many other places in the world as well. And that's what we hope to inspire you to be able to do, to actually use the resources that you have to value these systems of health and healing. The presentations going forward in terms of from Lena and Funmi are actually also focusing on how we support our communities, our families, the people we love and care about, to actually stay healthy. What do we have? What do we need to do to actually look at how to improve food security, but in a way that does also improve mental health? How do we design our cities and our towns so that we actually encourage these communities to form and to stay healthy? I'm going to end with a quote from Thomas Sankara, and I'm going to read this. You cannot carry out fundamental change without a certain amount of madness. It comes from non-conformity. It comes from non-conformity, the courage to turn your back on old formulas, the courage to invent the future. We invite you to contact us at the African Brain Health Network. We would love to hear from you. Our contact details are on the Creative Brain Week website, and we hope that we inspire you going forward as well. Thank you.
It's lovely. Thanks, Kirti. It was lovely to see you again. For our next two speakers, we're back in the room. So our next speaker is Funmi Akindejoye, who is a specialist in public health and is from Nigeria. She's particularly interested in how urban design can be used to promote brain health. And we're going to hear about some of her work around the impact of the environment in Lagos. So thank you, Funmi.
Thank you very much. So just wait for my slides to come up. Yeah, so as you rightly said, I'm from Nigeria, precisely from Lagos. Lagos, Nigeria is one of the most populous it's the most popular city in Africa, actually. I'll talk more about Lagos in a few minutes. So today I'll be talking to you Kirti mentioned about the resources that we have and how we utilize it. I did love to mention that I'm also a visual artist, a self-taught visual artist, and I try as much as possible to incorporate that into my work. So today I'll be talking to you about a case study, a qualitative case study that was carried out in Lagos, Nigeria in 2021 while I was doing my fellowship year. Well, quite on Zoom, but I was actually supposed to be at TCD, so we are referred to as mostly as the Zoom cohort. I have my colleagues here. All right, so yeah, urban design and mental health. So basically this case study was focused on mental health, how urban design factors that influences mental health in a city, and precisely Lagos. According to WHO, mental health is a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her potential and can cope with normal stresses of life. You would agree with me that cities have influence on our mental health and vice versa, basically on social factors and such as minority status and environmental factors such as maybe pollution, overpopulation, air pollution, noise, and also vice versa, because when there is poor mental health, then the productivity of such a city would suffer. Basically, I'm using a methodology from the Center of Urban Design and Mental Health, and they had proposed a framework called the GAPS framework. So basically, the GAPS framework consists of 4 elements: the green places, active places, pro-social places, and safe places. So basically, they gave this out in order to encourage strategic thinking in terms of urban design to encourage mental health. And I did love to mention that you would see most times when a city is being built or urban design is being considered, it's usually about physical health. Like, they're big on physical health, but mental health it's been overlooked in a way. So this is a call to action. And one thing that this study tries to encourage is a multidisciplinary approach for both public health specialists, architects, urban designers, urban planners. Yeah, so I'll talk about Lagos for a while. So Lagos has a population of over 20 million, and while Nigeria has a population of over 200 million. So it's the most populous state in Nigeria because it's the economic capital of Nigeria. And I was looking at my stats and found that there are over 85 migrants coming into Lagos per hour. So you can imagine how burdened the city is. And of course, it's plagued by a lot of traffic congestion, and there is a lot of stress going on in Lagos. And one reason for that is basically because of the way we commute. So daily commuting, it's a hassle, and that's why we have a lot of mental drain, and also it's prevalent with a lot of anxiety and depression. It will interest you to know that Lagos State, being the largest city in Nigeria, is also the smallest state in Nigeria in land mass. So you can imagine the burden that it carries. So I already mentioned about the objective is to basically determine and investigate fundamental elements of urban design and planning that influence mental health, specifically in Lagos. I talked briefly about my methodology. Basically, it was drawn from the Center of Urban Design and Mental Health methodology. So basically, we carried out literature review on Lagos, and primary data was collected using in-depth interviews, qualitative data from 10 professionals that live in Lagos, Nigeria, consisting of art designers, urban planners, architects, academics, and what have you. So we also did a thematic analysis on that. So basically the results, talk briefly for the first 4. Urban design factors considered to influence mental health, as you would must have guessed, public transportation and traffic reduction is number 1. So there is a crave to see better public transportation, and thankfully there's been they're tapping into the blue lines and the brown lines now in Lagos State, and also availability of adequate and affordable housing. We have a lot of forceful eviction in people that illegal dwellers, illegal occupants of maybe lands and what have you. And also houses are quite expensive for maybe the average Nigerian out there. And also we have cases of wetland protection, because there's been, so Lagos is made up of, permit me to say, like 60% of water. It's a rural state. So you see people try to encroach into water because the lands are really, really occupied. So that creates a lot of flooding, because if not done properly, that's what basically happened. So factors considered to contribute to levels of prioritization for mental health. We've seen cases where non-motorized transportation policy is being advocated for, because that's lacking in the city as well. I'll quickly move. So this is a picture of a few factors that we gathered. Of course, traffic is major. Then we have the affordable housing and forceful eviction. There is a community in Lagos, popularly referred to as Makoko. It's actually a tourist site. It's called the largest, it's the city on top, it's the largest city on water in Africa. Then another element you can see there is public art. So public art is a major part of Lagos, and that's one of the positive things about Lagos, because public art, as we all know, improves our mental health. It promotes, social engagement, and is an opportunity for people to get excited. And also, I was speaking in a way back about this project, and someone asked me, how does public art interact with people with dementia? And one very important factor is it could serve as a landmark for people that maybe on an ordinary day would get missing. So if they see, so they have this landmarks here and there, because, and they can get back home and not get missing. Yes, we have very good green spaces and blue spaces, but the only thing is we talk about affordability and accessibility. It's not accessible, but it's available, because you have to pay to get in there most of the time. So I talked briefly about barriers identified, perception. So the government feels like brick and mortar is what development is all about. But you agree with me that to build a sustainable and resilient city, you need to be able to incorporate, the needs of the local people, needs of stakeholders, and they might not need a skyscraper, but the government might feel the meaning of development is building a skyscraper, So some of the suggested opportunities for implementing urban design for mental health in Lagos, from the study, most of the respondents had mentioned building the new Lagos. So there is a new plan for Lagos City. So Lagos is divided into two parts. You have the island and the mainland. So being that the island, or rather the mainland, has been, over the years occupied and, has turned into a sprawl, you're trying to more like build the island properly. And another point for suggested opportunities for improvement is decentralization. You have a lot of Nigerians coming into Lagos. If we are able to, make the same facilities and resources available in other states. Nigeria has 36 states, then there will be, the burden in Lagos would be way reduced. Then another important point there is waterways transportation. Lagos is about 60% water, and we are really not utilizing the waterways for transportation. If that is done, then the burden on the road will be reduced. I wanted to mention that on the average, we spend 30 hours in traffic in a week, so that's huge. That's why there's a lot of insomnia in the state, and usually referred to as a city that does not sleep, so you can check that up. So this is what I will skip this. And yes, the conclusion basically is on, there is still, a lot of misinformation about mental health, and so there is need to reorient and raise awareness about mental health, not only for health practitioners, but both for technical persons like urban designers and urban planners, and also provision of adequate and affordable housing. And yeah, we also mentioned decentralization. I just dwell on number 6, multidisciplinary collaborations. I think that's what this conference has been all about, because a mental health specialist or a public health specialist cannot do the job alone. So there is need to collaborate. If an urban planner is building, there is need to collaborate with, a mental health person or a public health person in order to build effectively. So I just briefly, since we are using the opportunity for the Creative Brain Week, mentioned about the art exhibition that we had. So in trying to, disseminate information about the results of this study, we had, an art exhibition in not a conventional one, at the Neuropsychiatric Hospital in Lagos, so that we were targeting a particular audience, not the regular. So we had, several physiotherapies. We had patients come in, family members to, raise awareness. It was also like in a bid to raise awareness about mental health and how urban design could influence mental health. So these are some of the pictures from the event. And it was a group exhibition of myself and 3 other of my artist friends. So now, this is my work. I just briefly explained this. This is talking about traffic, and the other one is talking about non-motorized transportation. So Mentopedia is an art exhibition on urban design and mental health, and now it's become a series. I had one earlier last year in Finland, because I carried out the same study in a small city in Finland. And yeah, so now it's become a series of art exhibition. So this is another work from one of our collaborators, and this is talking about using the waterways for transportation and green spaces. Then I think this talks basically about mental health and the thoughts of people. And this is from a colleague also. I think she depicted her mental state during the COVID pandemic. And lastly, due to the exhibition that was carried out at the Neuropsychiatric Hospital, we had various conversations that gave rise to a new idea of working with elderly people in care homes to produce vertical gardens. So we had worked with them to bring this project to life, where they painted the pots and, did transplant. And right now, we are currently in the second phase of this project, working on 2 other homes in Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you for listening.
Excuse me, that's beautiful work. Thank you, Funmi. And we're going to stay on the topic of the environment with the next speaker. At the end, we may have time for questions before we finish. But our final speaker in this section is Lena Stofile, who's another of our Atlantic Brain Fellows. And she's also the head of health, environmental health in Cape Town. She's going to tell us about some projects involving urban gardens in Dyslexia. I apologize for all my pronunciations today, but I'm looking forward to hearing about urban gardens. Thank you.
It's a bit of tongue twister. So I will be sharing with you the story of the Harare Community Food Gardens in Khayelitsha, South Africa, to showcase the endless and creative possibilities of addressing adverse environmental health challenges that influence physical, mental, social well-being in vulnerable communities, if we dare to imagine and put imagination into action. So I'll be playing a short video clip just to show how the project unfolded, and it will be rounded off with a brief background presentation of the place and the lived environment of the community food garden group that partook in this project.
It's legendary beans.
are living. Kilo dale, aye ole to ye o, aye oni double. Adura lo le she o, call on daddy. Adura gba o, tishu eni badele. I forward boja. I am feeling good tonight. This thing got me thanking God for life. Oh, I can't explain. I can't explain. Yeah. I am feeling good tonight. This thing got me thanking God for life. I can't explain. I can't explain. Yeah. I say, near you ever. They know my story. From old dogs to me. I be hustle to walk. Say, near you ever. Oh, me and see. From old dogs to me. We been hustle to walk. See, I kill a fool money. What you do, my Lord, shadow. What I am, you want me was hard. What you do, my own body. I kill a fool money. What you do, my Lord, shadow. What I am, you want me was hard. Want me was hard. I am feeling good tonight. This thing got me thanking God for life. Oh, I can't explain. I can't explain. Yeah. I am feeling good tonight. This thing got me thanking God for life. I can't explain. I can't explain. Yeah. Kilo dale, aye ole to ye o, aye oni double. Adura lo le she o, call on daddy. Adura gba o, tishu eni badele. I forward boja. I am feeling good tonight. This thing got me thanking God for life. Oh, I can't explain. I can't explain. Yeah. I am feeling good tonight. This thing got me thanking God for life. I can't explain. I can't explain. Yeah. I say, near you ever. They know my story. From old dogs to me. I be hustle to walk. Say, near you ever. Oh, me and see. From old dogs to me. We been hustle to walk. See, I kill a fool money. What you do, my Lord, shadow. What I am, you want me was hard. What you do, my own body. I kill a fool money. What you do, my Lord, shadow. What I am, you want me was hard. Want me was hard. I am feeling good tonight. This thing got me thanking God for life. Oh, I can't explain. I can't explain. Yeah. I am feeling good tonight. This thing got me thanking God for life. I can't explain. I can't explain.
So while they're moving over to the presentation, so this food garden is located in Cape Town, which is known for one of the world's renowned tourist destinations, and it's also known as the Mother City. Okay, so the place, so Khayelitsha is a township that's located about 30 kilometers outside the city center, and it is home to about 500,000 people. So the name Khayelitsha is a Xhosa word, which means new home. So it has about 1/3 of the population of its population living in formal housing. It has public amenities, your recreational halls, libraries. It has health facilities. It even has a court. So we have a couple of shopping centers, and we have about 378 formal food registered premises. There's about 64 public schools in Khayelitsha servicing that population, and we have about 419 creches or educare centers. There's about 4 train stations that's serving as a transportation mode to connect the community with their work opportunities within the CBDs and other parts of Cape Town. There's 1 swimming pool. We have solar or green energy in most of our RDP or the community housing projects. But on other parts there is Eskom. But then there's also another side to Khayelitsha, which is what I want to share with you in terms of the challenges that is presented for the community that's living in this area. So Khayelitsha was established in 1985. It's part of the apartheid legacy of forced removals, where communities were moved from the city center to the peripheries of the city. So most of these areas were just settlements with next to nothing job opportunities, and people had to still commute into the city center to access work. You can also see in this picture that most of the houses are underwater, so that's the environment that you find yourself in when you live in an area like Khayelitsha. That's on the flip side, where most of the population is living. There's about 2/3 of the population is staying in the 94 informal settlements that is in Khayelitsha. Living conditions is the area is densely populated, overcrowded, faced with poor environmental conditions in terms of adequate access to water and sanitation and waste removal services. Most of the settlements are located also in areas that are below the flood line, the 50-year flood line. Some are in wetlands, so they dry in summer, but come the winter season, they are actually houses I was living with inside a swimming pool. So the housing material that is also used is mostly any available material, like corrugated sheets or whatever people can lay their hands on, and the material is often not strong enough to stand the severe weather conditions. When it's hot, it's extremely hot. When it's cold, those houses are extremely cold. So housing backlogs, a major problem. That's why you find the majority of the people living in your informal settlements as well. So the informal settlements are not spatially planned, they happen. So it's mostly land invasions, or it's a case of putting up a shack where you find an open space. So that comes with its own challenges in terms of when it floods. In winter, all the houses that are in wetlands will be flooded. And although the city has flood relief packages, it means that every rainfall within a month, if you get 10 occasions of rainfall, those shacks will be flooded in that time, and you have to be providing constant flood relief. In terms of alternative of relocation or alternative housing or building formal housing, that is something that's not going to happen in the near future. So these informal settlements are mostly there to stay, and it is a vicious cycle in terms of the adverse conditions that they are facing. So just that's the lived realities of many of the communities staying in Khayelitsha. They face severe weather conditions in winter, as I've mentioned, and come summer, you are a blaze away from losing everything. Because when one shack burns, because of the density of the settlements on top of, and the shacks on top of each other, and the material that they're building with, you stand a chance of losing an entire settlement of 1,000 dwellings, with people losing everything and just saving themselves. In many instances, there's even loss of life when some of these shacks catch fires. So that picture there at the bottom just shows life goes on. After a fire has happened, there's no money to go buy new material, so most of the communities have to just salvage what was burnt to try and build a new house again, which is often, again, not weatherproof, and it will leak again and again. Some of the conditions I've mentioned in terms of pollution, we're sitting with huge challenges in terms of pollution of the rivers, pollution of the canals that's running through the settlements because of issues around sanitation and access to enough toilets. So the canals and streams will also be most of the time serving as a way of disposing night soil. Social challenges in the community is high levels of unemployment. You're facing high levels of crime, low levels of education. That's why the majority of people that are migrating or into the city that do not have skill, whether it is within borders or across borders, they will be finding themselves accommodation in an area like Khayelitsha, because that's the only thing you can afford when you move into the city, because you cannot afford to pay rental in the more developed pockets of the city. So the informal economy is one of the means of securing jobs in the face of high unemployment. So a lot of people are trading informally on the corners of the street, selling whatever they can sell to make a living. And when it comes to the conditions, we need to also deal with the conditions for the traders. Access to water, women, especially women and children, spend the bulk of the day or the time that they have collecting water from communal taps, walking distances to fetch water, or spending the day doing the washing next to the nearest tap, which causes again the runoff of polluted waters down the street. Waste, another big issue. So most of the open spaces that are available within the community also serve as dumping spots. So you have major problems with rodent breeding, which in turn also presents your risk that goes along with the rodents that get into the shacks that will be eating people's food or even biting them at night. That is one of the main challenges that we sometimes deal with, that people complain that they have to be aware of the awake and watch out for the rats at times like this. Sanitation, so most of the settlements are having to share services in terms of toilets and taps, as I previously mentioned. And most of your services will be on the periphery of your settlements, which means that at night, women are at risk of being raped, or you are at risk of being attacked when you walk in the dark to the toilets, to access the toilets. So it's not safe. It's very unsafe to access sanitation at night, especially for women and children. Another challenge that's faced by communities living in Khayelitsha is that Khayelitsha is also a very volatile area. As I've mentioned, that when there's protest action, there's the chances of public amenities being burned. In the picture, you can see the bus that is serving as a mode of transport for communities to get to work or to get to school will become the first target of being destroyed. So it's a very highly traumatic area sometimes to be in terms of when things happen. It is very traumatic and volatile. On the other picture, you can see that's incident where there is land invasion, where communities take a space of land to put up housing, and the law enforcement officials coming in and clashing with the communities to break down or dismantle the shack. So you have then incidences of violence also erupting in situations like that. Next picture also showing also what happens when there's protest action, whether it's for service delivery, whether it's for housing or many other needs. You can see that it becomes very volatile, and it's an area of high stress in many instances for the community. So the state of lockdown also further exacerbated the gaps because it increased the level of unemployment, the levels of homelessness. People had to lose their houses because they couldn't pay the rent or they couldn't pay the bond, so they had to resort to move out of their houses and move into areas of informality. So all of these conditions and environmental challenges put a huge strain on mental health, and for women, for men, they are living in an environment that is highly stressful most of the time. So the community garden project was about imagining how we can, within this need of competing needs for land and for housing and for all these other environmental issues, can we use public spaces to create opportunity for communities or community groups to access land in a safe environment where they can address issues of food insecurity and the socioeconomic factors. So I'm not going to go through all of the slides again because it was part of what the video was showing. So that is part of the environmental health officers in Khayelitsha that had a space of the garden that was not utilized at the time, and the space of a community hall next to it also that had an underutilized space that was just overgrown, that we saw the opportunity to partner with communities and transform that into a community garden space. So that is the group that is currently working on that space. And fast forward now, it started off as a food garden, but it has evolved now in terms of them now coming to develop other products, byproducts from the garden. They are now into bokashi. They're making bokashi with some of the vegetables and peels that they get from surrounding food gardens, as well as the offal from the garden, as well as producing compost from the weeds in the garden. So, thank you.
It was fantastic work, and thank you, Lena. And I'd just like to thank all our speakers from today's session. So Virginia, who I think is gone, and Justine, Funmi, Lena, Bongiwe, and also Vonde-r and Kirti on Zoom. So before I close the session, I just want to thank everyone for their contributions and their talks today. I think it really does show that all of these things, art and music, and storytelling and culture and environment, they're all connected, and they all contribute in different ways to health and mental health and brain health. And that's what Creative Brain Week really is all about. So I'd like to thank all the speakers before we pass over to Bongiwe for her performance. So thank you all for attending. If you have questions for any of us, we can mingle outside afterwards. But to close the performance, or to close the session, I'll hand over to Bongiwe.
So while I'm waiting for my non-audible video, if it can be played on the screen. So in this video, I'm responding to a culture of care, working with children in my community, working with children who are coming from single-headed households, because most of their parents... Can you please play the one from the Atlantic Fellows, please? Thank you. From single-headed households, and which most of their parents have to go to the city in order to find work. And I would also like to take this moment to really thank the Atlantic Institute and the whole team for really providing us this opportunity to come all the way to Dublin from all over the world, and also to put in mind that today is the International Women's Day. And I would first like to thank all the women from all over the world who have paved this way for us. We are walking in great footsteps of activists. I would like to thank my mother for putting this amazing outfit for me, spending so many sleepless nights. My brother, who's doing the all running around, and my son, who practices care by giving me a hand massage or a foot massage whenever I come from long trips. So thank you so much. The next song is called Amanzi, and it speaks about the journey, reimagining a journey of what comes together from all the rivers that connect all of us. Enjoy. So in this song, Amanzi, I'd like you to join me on the chorus. It's easy, it's not difficult. You don't have to be a musician or a singer to sing it, and you can sing it however way it's comfortable for you and however way it means to you. And don't worry, I will lead you to the chorus. mama. Hey, ivume yokungenelwa gcwele. Haye. Amanzi makosazana. Are you ready for the chorus? Okay. Amanzi makosazana amanzi. Are you ready? There you go. Do you want me to repeat it again? Okay. Where are your brains? And your mind? Okay. Okay, let's go. Amanzi makosazana amanzi. Amanzi makosazana amanzi. Amanzi makosazana amanzi. You don't have to say it right. Amanzi makosazana amanzi. However way it makes sense to you. Amanzi makosazana amanzi. Nice. Can you say that a bit louder? Bit louder. I can't hear you. Maybe we want to do a bit of clapping. I can't hear you. Selamat. 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 Magosazana. Selamat. Magosazana. Can we take it down? Amanzi makosazana amanzi. Amanzi makosazana. So wait for it. Amanzi makosazana. Hold it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Good night.